welcome to Wisdom Wednesday. I am glad to be here on this first week of school. It has been crazy and busy, but really blessed. And I hope that your first week of school is going well, despite the fact that the teacher's lists don't match what you need, despite the fact that some of the things just weren't available, and despite the fact that nobody's in the class they want and none of their friends are in the classes that they want them in. We have made it to day 3 of back to school, and I'm excited and grateful. And I am here tonight for Wisdom Wednesday to talk about accepting what doesn't make sense. As you guys know, I come on Wednesday nights to talk about relationships, most importantly, the relationship that we have with God and with ourselves. But those relationships necessarily influence the relationships that we have with other people, right? Because how we view ourselves and what we view our responsibility to others as through the lens of what God has ordained us to do. And I just want to give my standard disclaimer. If this is your first time catching one of my lives, my name is Naomi. I go by the How To Chick. I'm a child of God. I'm a wife, a mom, a coach, an attorney, a mentor, and a speaker. But most importantly, I believe that you can do anything, but you can't do everything, and you must choose wisely. And because I come on a lot to talk about relationships, a big part of what I speak about comes through the lens of my faith. So when I say the relationship with God and with yourself really determines the relationship you have with others, that's so, so true. But a lot of people, even those who call themselves Christians, don't see um, a need, right, to have the conversation of how they view their relationships in terms of their faith. We put our relationships in little boxes. We have family, we have work friends, we have play cousins, we have best friends, we have friends, then we have that outer layer of people that we like to call friends. But I tell you, it's okay to make differentiations. Acquaintance is a good enough title. We have people that we know from our hobbies. We have people we know from our kids' schools, people that we know from sports. And these relationships, right? All of them turn on what we view as our perspective, right? What we see in these people, like, you know how they always say you don't get a second chance to make a first impression. Part of that is because in so much of what we do, our immediate experience, a person, a place, a situation, even an idea, shapes how we believe it, what we believe about it, and how we interact with that person or that situation for the rest of our lives, if not at least the immediate present. And so when I say that it is so important for us to evaluate the context of our friendships and our relationships, I don't mean that we have to decide that we're not going to, give people a second chance, right? In certain situations where they've rubbed us the wrong way. I don't necessarily mean that. And I'm not really talking about relationships that have shallow length. I'm actually talking about how to accept the truth about a person in a situation without imputing anything negative to them. And this is actually harder because, like, a couple of months ago, I was talking about a young lady who had mentioned that she had a friend who was actively praying against her. My computer is doing the most, guys. I'm trying to see if I can fix it, but I think I'm still on. A friend who was actively seeking her harm, anything good that she wanted for her life that she told this young lady she wanted. The girl admitted at some point, I was praying against that. I was praying that you wouldn't get pregnant or that you wouldn't get that job or that your marriage wouldn't work out. Whatever it was, anything good that she wanted for her life, this person that she thought was a very good friend, her best friend, even in that season, was actively praying against that. And I was talking about in that season using discernment and how to recognize, people's place. But today I'm talking about accepting what doesn't make sense. And when I'm talking about this, I'm not talking about casual relationships. I'm not even talking about friendships. I'm really talking about the closest relationships that we have, those relationships with our family members and the relationships that we have with people who have been there forever. And I'm not, and when I say I'm not talking about friends, there are many people, I'm not one of them, but there are many people who easily make friends, who go through life in seasons, having 3 and 4 and 10 quote unquote best friends that they do everything with, they spend all their time with. They have mom friends, they have church friends, they have knitting friends, they have shopping friends, they have, people everywhere, and they consider these people their friends. And so the depth of relationship may be 6 months or it may be 20 years. They don't differentiate. See, I do, but I'm not judging those who don't. I'm saying we're talking about super close relationships. We're talking about people who've been there since the beginning. I'm talking sisters. I'm talking cousins that you grew up with. I'm talking the best friend that you met in preschool. I'm talking about people who've been around you your whole life. And I'm talking about recognizing when it's important to take a break. So, the last time we talked about the young lady whose friend was praying against her, we talked about how to discern when someone does not have your best interests at heart and how to stop ignoring the red flags. And that made sense to a lot of people in that season because that young lady, as we discussed, had not known her quote unquote best friend in that season a long time. They had met maybe on the internet, they had known each other for 3 to 5 years. And the season in which this happened was like a 2 year period. I'm talking about people you've known forever. I'm talking about people you've known your whole life. And I'm talking about when you start recognizing that there are things that aren't adding up, things that don't compute, things that don't make sense in the relationships that you have with these people. The interactions that they have with you has changed. They're snippy. They are not able to be happy for you. That is a really key indicator. Or they're actively, sabotaging you, saying, and I think I mentioned in that same live that I was talking about a woman who was not young, who was turning 50, and she had found a partner and they had been dating just a short period of time, but in that period of time they had grown very close. He had expressed an intention to have a long-term relationship with her. She told him that she had always wanted to go to this, country that she'd never been to, and he says, okay, let's go. They'd only known each other a short period of time. Her friends actively discouraged her not just from going with him, because they would have been fine for her to go with him if he was paying for everything, but they said that he should have been paying for everything, and really did not give her wise counsel in that season. So accepting what doesn't make sense is not about, you know, looking at what people are necessarily saying. It's more important to look at what they're not saying and what they're doing. And for a lot of us, we find ourselves moving to new heights. We get that degree, we get that new job, we get married, we have a child, we buy a new car. People can start acting crazy for really anything, and you start seeing that people are acting a little funny. I mean, for lack of a better word, they're acting a little funny. They're not speaking to you the same. They're not, and it's important to be wary of the people who are always there for you when you are having a hard time. The ones, and this is hard for me to say because good friends are going to be there for you in good times and bad. But if there are those who will come when you've lost your job and commiserate with you all day, but don't show up for your congratulation dinner when you get the promotion. If there are those who show up when you break up with your boyfriend or you catch him cheating and they stay and talk smack about him the whole time, girl, you could have done better. He wasn't good enough for you, yada, yada, yada. But when you announce that your engagement, they're nowhere to be found. And I'm not talking about announcing your engagement to the guy that was cheating. I'm talking about a later, subsequent, happy, healthy relationship. They're nowhere to be found, and they're acting stank, and they're unavailable for the events that you have leading up to you getting married. They are, you know, generally undermining your joy. They always have a little side comment. It's not that they're actively being mean, but they're just being negative and they're doing their best to introduce doubt. If you have people in your life who are fine as long as you are not doing better than them, but as soon as you are, they have a problem with you and they want to expose 10, 15, 30 years of grievances to you and dump on you how they feel about you because, right, you're doing well, because maybe the marriage didn't work out, but now you found a great guy and you got married again and things are going really well. And maybe you've decided to expand your family or you've gotten a big promotion and you guys are doing really well. And all of a sudden, right, when you're in your happiest place, They want to come and talk to you about the ways that you haven't shown up, the things that you didn't do, or the things that offended them. That's when it's time to start practicing radical empathy, accepting what doesn't make sense. There are people that we're never going to cut out of our lives. There are people who have been there forever, but who have to exist with a certain level of boundaries. As we discussed previously, you can't tell everybody anything, but for many of us, that doesn't extend to our cousins, our sisters, our best friends, our parents. And accepting what doesn't make sense means we have to radically examine the people that we have in our lives and the way that they respond to us, whether they encourage us or discourage us. I've seen a rash, just a huge number of 20 somethings and teenagers who are trying to better their lives, go off to college, move away from their hometown, whose parents actively discourage them. And at the root, they have no real reason. These are people who have done their due diligence, they've gotten scholarships, they have jobs lined up in other places. And when other people dig and try to help them let go in a healthy way that preserves the relationship with their child, it really comes down to this: they don't want their child to do better than they did. And that's a hard pill to swallow. That is a difficult thing. And I don't think anybody would be able to admit that. So we are talking about jealousy, but we're talking about the unspeakable kind. We're talking about the kind that is not even recognized. This person is not actively plotting against you. This person simply has a mindset that you can do well, just not better than me. And I think that it's hardest to stomach that from a parent, but it's hardest to see that in a friend, in a sibling, in a cousin, in someone that you've known and loved your whole life. It's harder to see that. You want to rationalize around it. You want to say this person would never do that. This person is not like that. I know them. You know them, but you know them in the one-dimensional experience that you've had of them. And when I say one-dimensional experience, what I really mean is as we walk through our lives and as we experience things, even with family and friends and loved ones, we're experiencing these things from our perspective. And we're not always critically examining or going back to examine how other people felt about the situation, the circumstance, the event. And sometimes when we do, what we find is, especially in situations where, you know, if you guys read the Bible, you know the story of Esther, Queen Esther, and Haman was incredibly jealous of Esther's cousin Mordecai. And the king has had a sleepless night and he has a scribe read to him and he finds something really good that Mordecai had done for him. And he says to Haman, he's like, hey, I want to honor someone. And Haman, of course, being puffed up and proud in his position in the court, thinks it's him. And so the king says, what should I do for someone who has done me a great honor and I want to honor them back? And Haman, of course, gives him this grand idea: dress him in royal robes, put him on a horse, have one of your royal advisors lead him through the city, crying out, thus shall it be done to the man whom the king delights to honor. And we know the story, right? The king says, that's a great idea. Go ahead and do that for Mordecai. And this is somebody that Haman actively disliked, right? And so what really ends up happening is we're in positions and we're in places and we're doing things and we see ourselves. My husband likes to call this just meisms. We think we're just doing what we do, but we do it really well. And people constantly thank us for what we've done. They invite us to do certain things. Our gifts have made room for us in whatever area it is, because there are a lot of people who've been working for years on their skill, on their talent, in their career, and they are actively courted to utilize the skills that they have gotten. And we don't see, because we see ourselves still as how we were when we were in early relationship with that person. If it's a sibling, we grew up in the same house. We've had all of our experiences together. You think they still see you like that, but they are seeing, right, the way that your gift has made room for you. If it is your friend, yes, you guys went to school together, you got the same degree, but you went off and got your PhD, you went off and got your MD, you went off and got your JD, and now you're traveling and you're speaking and you are making a significant amount of money more than what they're making. And you see that relationship, right? As because for many of us, especially um, those of us who have small circles, we can easily go back, right, and relate to these people the same way that we did when we were in those spaces and in those places. We have our inside jokes. We have the things that we do, the things that we like, the music we listen to, the games we play, the places. Now, the places we eat must upgrade. We are not going to IHOP in our 40s, but we can go back into the relationship as it was and think that the relationship will be the same. But in many cases, we're going back and those people are seeing and judging our success, not as a measure of how proud they are of us, but as a measure of their own failures. This can happen for girlfriends. I don't know if you seen this phenomenon, but I have a lot of friends who found that they lost friends when they had children, right? If they were the earliest person in their friend group to get married and have children, their friends were not down. They didn't care. They didn't want to get involved. Now, in many cases, the friends caught up. They later got married, later had children, later understood, why you can't come out to happy hour on a Tuesday when you have a baby. But this also happens for people who have been divorced. They find that they lose their entire friend group in one fell swoop, and the most resilient among us will find a new friend group. They will just keep moving and go on with their lives. But there are people, right, who want to see, and this is something that I am witnessing and I have witnessed several times recently. There are people, right, who are waiting for you to fail, right? They're waiting. They're waiting for you to lose that job. They're waiting for you to be disgraced. They're waiting for you to get divorced. They're waiting for your child to drop out of school or, you know, anything bad that they can see happen. They're waiting. They may not be praying for it, but they're waiting. And the reason they're waiting is because they believe that it will prove to them that you're not better than them. And unfortunately, that can create a really unhealthy dynamic in the existing relationship. If you have conversations with people and almost every time you have a conversation with them, they have something shady or something negative to say. They can't ever say a compliment. It always has to be a compliment accompanied by, right, a little side sentence, a little okey doke. They want to add a little shade like, oh, girl, you look good. You gained a little weight, but it looks good on you. You know, oh, girl, yeah. Oh, it's your anniversary, girl. I'm so happy for you. Yeah, girl. You know, we all thought, right? Your husband was swinging the other way. Why does that need to come up then? I want you guys to really evaluate your relationships. That's the point of tonight. Because for many of us, we're walking on eggshells with people. We feel anxiety with people. We're maintaining relationship with people who are not wishing us well, but we're maintaining the relationships because of the depth of the relationship. And there's a better and an easier way to do that. And part of that is first to accept that it's not going to make sense. You haven't done anything to them. In many cases, if they could point to anything you've done to them, it would be to leave them behind. If they could point to anything that has offended them, it is to set a boundary and to choose yourself, right? And sometimes that means that you can't show up for an event, that you can't fly to your hometown, or that you can't go out on a weeknight when you have classes or exams or whatever the next day, and you find yourself drifting, but you still are making an effort to reach out. And the boundaries that you're setting around achieving what you have set for your life are being used as weapons against you. Accepting what doesn't make sense is evaluating your relationships, taking stock of the people who are not sincere in their intentions towards you, and recognize and understand that these people, again, may not be actively plotting your demise, but they are hoping for it. They want to see anything that justifies their, and I hate to put it like this because a lot of these people have careers in which they're fulfilled. They may have marriages in which they are moderately happy, but any way in which they think you are better than them becomes a threat to them. So instead of learning, and the scripture says, mourn with those who mourn, rejoice with those who rejoice, instead of accepting that their life is going to look different and their priorities are different, they are secretly and openly, in many cases, hating on you and trying to cause you pain and discomfort and mental anguish in their interactions with you. These are the type of people who do make the side statements, but they also use guilt. Oh, she can't come out. Don't even invite her. She ain't coming. No, I'm not, because I have to be at work in the morning. No, I'm not, because I have an exam tomorrow. No, I'm not, because I'm in the middle of studying for the MCAT. And I think I said this last time, the crab in the barrel mentality. I hate that analogy. But a lot of times the truth is that they don't want to see you do better than them. And now that you have, and that you've chosen yourself, every boundary that you keep in place to ensure that you keep choosing yourself, that you keep living the life that you want to and intend to lead, is respected. And this goes for men too. I see this a lot. Like, men get married and their partners are actively trying to sabotage their marriage because they miss the wingman, they miss the party animal who was out, who brought them, you know, unlimited drinks, and who took them to places they couldn't get in, and who always had the ladies around. Examine your circle, examine those who are close to you, because sometimes these seasons don't last forever, but in many cases, they'll last long enough to introduce doubt for you. They'll last long enough to tear down a boundary that was necessary for the preservation of the life that you have. They'll last long enough to leave you in a space where you have ruined what you worked for: your marriage, your degree, your career, because you have allowed them to introduce doubt about your commitment to your relationship with them, because it's never about what you're doing. It's about what you're not doing. It's about how you're not showing up. Do not allow other people to project their insecurities to you. If you've had a situation where someone has said, I just really didn't appreciate XYZ that happened 20 or 15 or 30 years ago, 5 years ago, that you've had ample opportunity to discuss, but either has never been discussed or was discussed and you apologized and you thought it was over, it's important to recognize what's going on. What's going on is a boundary pushing exercise designed to increase doubt and to alleviate their feelings about your life. And it's just not your business. And it's not your job to make them feel good about your boundaries, your choices, or your life. So when it comes to our family members, when it comes to our long-term friends, when it comes to those people who have been in our lives for such a long time that we cannot envision our lives without them, they can still be boundary stompers and boundary pushers. They can still exercise jealousy in ways that cause harm, great and small, and they can still actively attempt to sabotage the life that we are trying to build, unless we have boundaries. And the boundaries require acceptance. If you guys didn't see my series on acceptance, I think it was 2023 in March. Highly recommend. And if it wasn't 2023 in March, I will try to figure out a way to link it in the comments. Acceptance is recognizing that we don't get to change people. We cannot force them to show up in a way that makes sense, but we can change how we interact with them in order to make it not just more palatable for us, but to comport with the boundaries that we need to have, right? Acceptance means I see you, and as a result of who and how you are, I will engage with you only on these. Like, there are people that you can't have conversations about politics or religion with. There are people that you know better than to go out with because they're going to try to keep you out till 3 a.m. There are people that you're not going on a trip with because you know that they like to cram six people into the Motel 6 and you like a little bit more reasonable standard of living. There are right boundaries, boundaries. Boundaries matter and boundaries help relationships. They don't harm them. Boundaries will keep you married. Boundaries will keep your finances together. Boundaries will keep you in that graduate degree programming, graduating, and in a career that you love. Boundaries with people, just like good fences make good neighbors, good boundaries make good relationships. So we have to learn to stop ignoring the behaviors that we see and instead evaluate them in the context of our relationship to the person. And if that person is a person that we want or we desire in our lives, it may be wise to have a conversation. If that conversation devolves into a litany of reasons why you have failed in the relationship, it's okay not to accept it. You can apologize for how you made them feel when you set the boundary, but you never need to apologize for the boundary. And it's important to reiterate to them that your boundary will stand. And at that point, and this is the hardest part for some people because you are setting a boundary for you. You're not setting a boundary to make them do anything. A boundary is not you can't talk to me about this or what. Boundaries are unenforceable as to other people. A lot of people think boundaries are giving people a list of things we will and will not do. Boundaries are what we do for us. They're not what we impose on other people. So it is important that if they decide that they do not accept your boundary, that you smile and nod and then impose a new boundary. And that boundary may be, I'm not going to be communicating with you on XYZ dates or times. I'm not going to be telling you about the good things that happen to me in my life. And that can be a really hard one to enforce. That's one that we talked about last time because there are people that for those things, they will actively pray against you. They will actively try to sabotage you. I watched a video about a young lady who found out that her stepsister was calling around trying to cancel her wedding venue, cancel her wedding dress. She knew how that young lady was, and she still allowed her to come to the fitting. She still allowed her some information, not enough because fortunately, because of conversations that she'd had with the bridal salon, the bridal salon was tipped off that she wasn't the bride and actually called the bride. And that's how she found out her stepsister was trying to cancel her entire wedding. Had called all of the vendors. She should never have had that information. That's why boundaries matter. Boundaries protect us, but they also protect our relationships with other people. Because in that case, it probably would have destroyed her relationship with her parents to go after her sister. As a matter of fact, her father was, because her stepsister had canceled the venue at that point, and her father was saying, "Oh, I'll go get a loan to pay for the wedding," a loan he could ill afford in his 60s. Boundaries save relationships. You can't tell everybody everything. You can't do everything with everybody. You can't go everywhere with everybody, and you can't expect everyone to come with you to every level. Sometimes as we grow, the rings in our relationships, the best friend, family ring, to the mid acquaintance ring, to the work friend ring, to the, hobby friend ring, out to the acquaintance ring. Sometimes there's got to be some blurring there. There are people that are friends for a season, and that's okay. But for those people that are in our lives forever, the boundaries have to be fluid enough to allow them to exist in our circles and our spaces without disturbing our mental peace and without interfering with the life that we desire and are actively working to achieve. And we can do it. We can do it by accepting the truth, even when it doesn't make sense. This is a hard topic. It's been really hard for me to do this, but I've been practicing it for a few years and it has changed my life. Compartmentalizing what I tell people, when I tell people things, how I relay information, and the details for people who I know do not have the capacity to rejoice with me in that season. Accepting what doesn't make sense means enforcing boundaries for you. You can do it. But you must choose wisely. I hope this has been helpful. It has been long, but this is a really important skill and one that we should teach our children. I hope that this was helpful, and I hope to see you next week for Wisdom Wednesday. Good night.